Sonic X episode 51. I'm really curious to see what'll happen in this episode because I don't see how they could make a whole 20-minute episode out of Sonic running around with Chris. Now this is a really refreshing, creative twist having Chris be the villain for once. And of course there's tons of foreshadowing to it, so it makes sense. In the beginning of the episode just reuses footage of the Sonic characters leaving and Chris making sure Sonic stays. I know Chris cares about Sonic, so I understand, but it's still such a filler episode. Chris says his name in a panic and grabs Sonic and runs off with him. And it was sweet that Sonic clearly appreciated holding his hand. It was relatable. He completely humors Chris and runs off with him when really you'd think Chris would just be dragging Sonic behind him. We're told that they need the police to find Chris, and Chuck reveals there's not much time before all time stops. All because Chris is keeping Sonic on Earth. He's really got separation anxiety if he thinks making time stop will be worth keeping Sonic around. The only reason this wasn't a no shit filler scene was that Chuck told us that time could still freeze even with just one Mobian here. But still, how does Chuck know this for sure? We didn't need this extra time freezing stakes thing to exist anymore because we know that if Sonic doesn't go back to Mobius, he won't be able to fight Eggman. Surprisingly, we see night turn to day with Chris still not found yet. Sonic has to be intentionally humoring Chris here because he could have easily just run away from him at the speed of sound. But that is the character for him because he's the kind of hero who spent all day with Helen just out of pity, and he's reckless. So he thinks he can get away with giving Chris time to get ready for him to leave without time freezing before he does. And he doesn't want Chris to get too far away with him, so he has Chris run instead. Chris asks Sonic what they do now, which is a good question. What did they do all that time between night and day? They couldn't have stopped to sleep because someone would find them eventually, since it's not Sonic running and covering a huge distance. He says he can't go back home, and Sonic has no qualms about Chris stealing a kid's bike, even though he can run way faster than a bike and could have done so while carrying Chris. He doesn't even try to lecture Chris about uncharacteristically stealing a bike. First off, this is more something that Scourge would approve of, not Sonic. Second, Chris is a guy who felt awful about tricking Danny in that tournament, so this is really bizarre for him. So, he's so ridiculously nice that he humors Chris the whole episode, but he isn't nice enough to keep him from stealing a kid's bike. I get why, because he doesn't know that kid and does know this one, but that's very anti-hero of Sonic. This is definitely the antisocial X-Sonic, that's for sure. Because just like when he didn't explain to his friends why he was destroying the mirror towers before he did it, he's not thinking ahead. Now, at least this is interesting, but confusing. Sonic says that the best trips are the ones where you don't know where you'll end up, and they go to eat at a restaurant that's conveniently completely empty, and it sure is convenient that the owner of the restaurant doesn't call the cops on Sonic when he should really recognize him and know what's going on. The newscast finally, just now, accuses Chris of kidnapping Sonic, and his mom cries on the news and begs him to come home. The conversation feels awkward, as once again, all Sonic talks about is how he's been to every part of the world and runs a lot, and Chris comments on it. They have nothing in common. It makes Sonic feel like a parody of himself when all he really has to say is, I run a lot, that's for sure. I run everywhere. When literally no other continuity of Sonic has that much focus on this. Archie Sonic feels a lot more like a real person than he does. And so does Fleetway Sonic. Somehow Chris blames his parents being famous for the world finding out about the kidnapping, even though Sonic's famous anyways. Finally, he lets out his resentment for his parents because he says his parents aren't worried when he needs them to be, even though they want to spend time with him when he has a cold. But that's really rare. Sonic asks if he gives up, making it obvious that he's just waiting for Chris to be ready to let go of him, and that was his plan all along. He stands in front of a car to make it stop and sleeps in some hay in the trunk instead of sitting inside the car. Oh wait, the car doesn't have a back seat. So it's justified this time. He literally can't sit beside Chris, and he knows Chris is safe for having a seatbelt on. The driver was really nice to not bring Chris to the cops and instead bring them to the forest. You'd think there would be reward money for finding Chris. Guess not. Sonic asks how he could forget someone who's gotten him in so much trouble. And I guess the reason Chris laughed was because Sonic was cheerful about it. Chris wonders if they'll stop looking for him, and wonders if even his family would give up. Again, I love that they have him say this stuff. He does resent his parents for neglecting him. That's why he's doing this. It's not just something you're looking too deeply into because of fanon. This is why he's lonely. Chris climbs up the rocks on a waterfall, and Sonic helps him up. He spent more time with Sonic in this one episode than in the entirety of the show combined. Well, it feels like it anyways. If it was normal for them to spend so much time together, then I would understand Chris being so attached to Sonic in particular. But instead, every time Sonic runs around to explore, he insists on not carrying Chris with him for some reason. Because he's an antisocial, that has to be it. Chris trips on a rock and he says he doesn't need a hand and can get up and climb the hill himself. That's rude. Sonic says he's never been to this lake before and is impressed by it. Chris's dad says he doesn't care how much money it costs and he just wants Chris found. So his family might go bankrupt at this rate. Chris's mom says she should send a message saying Chris can get whatever he wants if he comes home. This makes me appreciate how good of a kid Chris really is, because if he really was a brat, he'd run away all the time to get whatever he wants out of his parents. Instead, it's rare. Finally, Chuck tells him that he can't rely on his corporate empire to get Chris home because that's what drove him away. Chuck finally calls his son out on his neglect, saying that he won't get Chris back until he fixes this problem. He tells them that Chris wants to be found by his parents. And Chris tells Sonic that he used to come to the lake every summer with his parents when he was little. As the sun sets, Chris complains that his family stopped coming here for the summers because his parents were always too busy. This episode's way better than I expected. I love that they actually addressed this and it's not just left to fanon. They're actively spelling out for you that Chris did this for a reason. It's not just because he's clinging to Sonic for no reason. He nearly trips when carrying some sticks, and he says that Sonic hasn't said anything about this, and he asks Sonic why he's come with them, and if he's gonna stay on Earth. Sonic says that he was waiting for Chris to talk. Shockingly, he says he'll do whatever he tells him to. Then when he says that Chris saved his life earlier, Chris snaps at him that the whole reason Sonic was his friend was because he thought he owed him. How many times are we gonna have the show reuse this footage of Sonic falling into the pool? And this is the first time we've had to re-watch the entirety of him almost drowning in that pool. Reused footage always feels really lazy. We already knew this. This could have been spent on the actual episode. Out of nowhere, Chris says that Sonic paid him back by pretending to be his friend. To be fair, Sonic barely spent any time with him. Chris is obviously doing this out of insecurity. Even he knows how lucky he is to be with Sonic, to the point where he feels unworthy of it. Sonic reassures him that he wouldn't mind staying here with him. And Chris comes to the conclusion that he can't let time stop just because he wants him here. And his voice starts to break as he admits that he let him down and was selfish. He falls to his knees and starts to cry, and Sonic puts his hand on his shoulder. Chris says he'll be alone again when he leaves, and admits that ever since he was little, he's been waiting for a friend like Sonic who always ignores him and spends most of his time running around the world. Sonic reassures him that they will see each other again someday. It does make sense that Chris came to this conclusion because he is a good person, just struggling right now. And Sonic tells him that the moon looks the same from both worlds. Really? How the fuck does that work? So the egg moon looks the same regardless? Why does Sonic assume this? And it sure was convenient that Chris's parents figured out where to find Chris. They haven't been here in ages. The episode just abruptly ends with Chris staring into the light in the lake and smiling at his parents. So I guess I'm supposed to assume Sonic ran into the portal and went home off screen? That sounds like something I should have seen. Shockingly, I think this might be a really good episode, at least by Sonic X standards. I was pretty curious about seeing what exactly the plot would be like, since the whole episode would have a pretty basic plot, just Chris runs away with Sonic. How do you know what'll happen from that? The reason I was so impressed by this plot was because they actively spell out for you from Chris's own words that it's his parents' neglect that made him so lonely. They go out of their way to not only have Chuck stand up to his son for this, But they also have Chris tell you that he used to go to a cabin every summer, and he stopped because his parents got too busy for him. It'd be much less likely that this whole plot would happen with more Sonic characters than just Sonic with Chris, because a character other than Sonic would be nagging him a lot more about how he needs to get them home. But Sonic's a lot more patient with him. Wait, Sonic not being impatient? That's certainly unique. I bet Fleetway Sonic would have just taken off from him in seconds and avoided this entire filler episode. I mean, really, this episode's filler. While I love that they go out of their way to directly confirm this, we already assumed that Chris was lonely thanks to his parents. They obviously gave him separation anxiety. It's so bad that it makes sense that he's unable to think straight and realize that he can't let time stop just so he can keep being with Sonic. And Sonic knows he won't actually let that happen. So he just kept lying to him that he'd stay with him so that he could decide to let go of him by himself, so he'd feel better about it than if Sonic just left him before he was ready. Because if he did that, Chris would feel like Sonic abandoned him. That's why this episode happened, because Sonic couldn't live with doing that to Chris when he already has to deal with his parents neglecting him. It's weird that Sonic let him steal a kid's bike when he's this nice though. Is he an anti-hero or not? You're supposed to keep it consistent at least. The big thing that's confusing about this is that he thinks Sonic is such a close friend and the friend he's been waiting for all his life, even though Sonic barely spends any time with his friends in this show. Of course, all of the other Sonic characters went home before Sonic for some weird reason. You'd think they'd all step through the portal at the same time, and thus Chris would have had to shut off the portal for all of them. Not that it would matter because he could only run away with Sonic, and maybe one other person since he does have two hands. So the rest of them would all go through the portal anyways without him there. Chris may have done something wrong, but when he realized he had to let Sonic go, he outright broke down in tears and started crying because he felt like he was being selfish. This episode had a lot of genuine heart that made me actually care about it and feel sorry for Chris. So it makes me sad that so many cynical Sonic fans just flat out hate him for this one mistake he made to start the episode, when even in the episode itself, he realized he was wrong and felt terrible. That's at least better than the issue where Sally broke up with Sonic because it took forever for her to apologize. Though just like that issue, they blatantly spell out to you through the character itself why the character is acting distressed out and making this mistake. But it seems like everyone who watched the show didn't care that they were being told why he did it, and just hate Chris anyways. When the entire point of the episode was to make you feel bad for him by telling you exactly why he was lonely enough to do this in the first place. Because Chris was left alone with Sonic after he made a big mistake, and he had to live with that for the next 2 days, and he was naturally pretty confused that instead of Sonic lecturing him the second he could, Sonic not once got mad at him and called him out on it, because he's just that nice. It's not like he didn't show self-awareness. Like, even Chris knows that he made a mistake. It's redundant to complain that he made a mistake, because it's not like the show was unself-aware of that and needed to be called out on it. It's frustrating because this is Chris's version of the slap, where the character makes a mistake, and the fanbase will never ever let him live it down, even though this is handled a lot better because he realizes he made a mistake in the same story where it happened, and it's made a lot more obvious why he did what he did. It doesn't take forever to explain every single bit of foreshadowing that's happening. And while there was a lot of that for Chris, most of it was redundant. It seems like the Sonic franchise just can't get away with having the main character make a huge mistake. I can understand being aggravated because all of time will freeze if Sonic spends too long on Mobius, which still feels really stupid and arbitrary. But this is much more Sonic's fault than Chris's. Because Sonic could have ran away from him and gone to the portal by himself if he really cared about keeping the world safe from that. It wouldn't matter what Chris did if Sonic took charge. He could have gone home himself in seconds. Sonic's being even more dumb than Chris is because he's not having any kind of separation anxiety to cloud his judgment enough to risk the planet. At least with Chris, he snapped under all the stress and is really desperate to prevent something he's dreaded for months. And there's been a ton of foreshadowing to this. And there's also been foreshadowing to Sonic doing this too because he's humored him to a ridiculous extent sometimes. Especially in the comic where he didn't tell Chris that Eggman was El Gran Gordo, even when to get him out of getting Eggman back to his base.